Hello and welcome to the first lecture of Philosophy 110 Online. In this lecture, what I'd like to go over are just some general introductions to myself, to the course, and to the material we'll be studying in here. So, first off, the voice that you're hearing right now is mine, and my name is Taylor Sutton. I will be your instructor for the course. Yes, that is a picture of me, and it is awful. And yeah, it's what I had available. I'm sorry. In general, I'm going to be the one narrating these lectures, uploading and grading all the content on Blackboard, making some terrible jokes, and adding some extra commentary to all the things that are on the slides. Essentially, I'm the person that you'll be interacting with the most. Please feel free to contact me at any point if you've got any questions, concerns, or things you're just not sure about with the class. In order to do that, all of my contact info is actually listed on the right side of your screen. I've listed email, which is usually the best way to get a hold of me, my phone number, and the physical office location that I have on the West Lafayette campus. Now, again, email is generally the best way to get a hold of me, because I try and answer email all day until about 8 p.m. or so. I'll also try and answer all emails rather quickly, within about 24 to 48 hours, but usually a lot faster than that. However, don't expect any late-night replies. Similar rules go for the phone number. If you call the phone number and I'm not able to answer, and I guarantee after 9 p.m. I won't be answering, you can still leave me a voicemail, and that'll get forwarded to me as a text message rather quickly, and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible, but again, don't expect any late-night replies. They'll usually be the next day. I am in my office on and off all summer, so feel more than welcome to arrange an actual face-to-face meeting with me if you'd like. For either discussing questions, some other matter. Try and stay away from venting personal details unless they're relevant to the class in some way. Just a little awkward. But as long as things are class relevant, I'd love to meet with you guys and actually try and help out as much as I can. My goal in this class is to cover the material and actually make it an interesting and enjoyable experience. I want you to do as well as possible. So please feel free to contact me. Now, all of this info, the contact info and the rest, can be found in the syllabus, as well as the couple of policies I'm going to highlight here in a second. Now, the syllabus is posted in the course content part of the Blackboard page of the class. I know every instructor says this sort of thing, but especially for an online class, it's especially important that you read every part of the syllabus and get familiar with it. Because this class is online only, there's no physical presence required on campus, then we don't have a lot of the small interpersonal interactions, like say at the start or the end of class, where I remind you of everything or I clarify a course policy. Essentially, we just have to go entirely off of these lectures and the content in them, as well as anything I post to Blackboard. So it's especially important that you get familiar with every aspect of the syllabus because you're responsible for the content of it. I'm going to just assume that you've read every part of it and understand it unless you ask me a question about it. So, you're going to need to follow all of those policies. It contains everything about what kinds of assignments there are in the class, how the grading scale goes, and all those nice and wonderful logistics details. It also covers a few policies that govern how we're going to be interacting in the class, non-discrimination stuff and the like. Now, in case you haven't noticed this, or in case you've somehow managed to get to this lecture without going through this route, in the course content part of the class, of the Blackboard page, there'll be a folder posted at the start of each unit, each division of the class, that has everything in it, including the lectures. The reason why I say you should probably know this already, because somehow you found your way to the first lecture for the first unit. All of the other lectures will be in the same place, just with different unit numbers. So all of the Unit 2 lectures will be in the Unit 2 folder, and so on and so forth. Now, the unit folder is going to contain everything that you need for that unit. It's going to have a checklist of everything that you're going to need to do. It's going to have all the lectures, the PowerPoint slides, the assignments, links to those, as well as links to any external readings that we're doing that go around. So the unit folder is where all the stuff actually happens, and the unit checklist is your friend. So long as you do everything that is on that checklist, I guarantee you're most of the way to doing absolutely wonderful in this class, performance being the other major factor. So long as you do everything on that checklist by the due date, that is, by the time that the unit closes at 11:59 p.m. that is just before midnight on the last day of the unit, you're golden. Now, if you miss that deadline, if you don't get an assignment in, I will not be reopening it. Barring some major medical emergency, something unexpected that you can document as interfering with a major chunk of your life during the unit. Without that sort of thing, I'm not reopening those assignments. Missing it because you forgot or something that you didn't document or didn't try to avoid, well, in those situations, I'm not reopening the units. However, if you anticipate there being a problem, that is, if you know that something's coming up that's going to stop you from completing your assignments within the period of time that they're available, please get a hold of me ahead of time. I would love to actually make other arrangements for you so that you can complete the assignments. I'm here to be as useful and as welcoming as I can be, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to reward laziness either. So, again, all of these policies are found on the syllabus, and it's really your responsibility to review over these. What I'd like to spend the rest of the lecture going over, both in this part and the second part, is the actual content of what the class is going to be about. That is sort of giving you a preview of what kind of subject matter, what kinds of questions, and what kind of methods we'll be using to address those questions. So, chances are, a lot of you don't actually have a very clear idea of what philosophy is. Some of you may have some inkling, but it's actually very rare that most folks have an idea of what philosophers actually do or what it is that they study. I know I didn't when I first signed up for a course. So, for one, just to clarify, when we talk about philosophy in this course, we're not actually talking about, say, my philosophy or, Hume's philosophy or whatnot, the way that you're talking about, like, say, a set of beliefs or a set of guiding principles that governs their life. That's just not really the way we use the term. We're not going to be saying, my philosophy, so-and-so's philosophy. It's just not what we're talking about. Instead, when we talk about philosophy, we're talking about a unique field of study that has its own unique subject matter, just like biology, physics, or economics does. Now, not everybody has a clear idea of what that subject matter is, but there is a unique subject matter. I'd like to take a few minutes to try and clarify what that is. Now, like a lot of those other fields, we can get a little bit of a hint from the name. It doesn't solve everything for us, but it does give us some indication of the kinds of things that philosophy goes into. Just like biology comes from bios and logos, meaning like the study of life, or economics is the management of the home or the management of the home's resources. Philosophy also comes from the Greek, philos sophia, or the love of wisdom. So philosophy is going to be about wisdom in some way or another, but that's still a little bit open-ended. So nowadays when we talk about philosophy, what we usually mean is that it's the study of fundamental principles and concepts. And just as a heads up and a fundamental concept of this class, if something shows up on the slides in bold and underlined, chances are it's something that you ought to know. In this case, the definition of what philosophy studies. So philosophy is the field that gets into a lot of the foundational ideas that serve as the basic level of almost every other aspect of life or field of study. So, like, for example, there's a group of philosophers who do what's called the philosophy of science. These guys investigate things like what science is, what kinds of evidence are used in science, what are the most effective methods, what is it trying to accomplish, what things should count as convincing results. Should we treat theoretical things like protons and electrons and neutrons as real, or just as useful shorthand for the results in experiments? These are all questions that most scientists don't actually ask or investigate. Most scientists generally take it for granted that empirical observation is the most effective way of doing science. And they're correct, I think. But the point is that there's a lot of foundational and fundamental questions that people in different fields or in life just don't take the time to think about. And it's not a fault. They've got a lot of other things to worry about. But somebody has to worry about these foundational and fundamental concepts, and philosophy is where that happens. Philosophy asks a lot of the big questions of life. Those fundamental human questions that you end up asking at 2 a.m. with a bunch of friends while you're half drunk. Things like, what is real? What's the point of it all? What's the meaning of life? How am I supposed to be living? what's the most important thing for me to be working after? These are the big questions that affect every other aspect of our life, even if we don't think about them consciously. We have to, in some way or another, either try and answer these or assume an answer to these. And it seems all the better that we actually take real effort, rigorous, serious effort, try and answer these big questions. On the one hand, it's just a natural human drive to want to know these things. But on the other hand, there's a lot of these things we just simply don't understand. So a lot of times, philosophy ends up looking like we're asking a bunch of stupid questions about obvious subjects, but the things that we ask about are actually usually nowhere near clear or well understood. So let's take an example for just a moment. Take the question, when do you know something? Now, this probably sounds a little weird. Most everybody knows when they know something or not. And if you're trying to explain what you mean by, I know such and such, well, you generally don't have to explain the know part of that statement. Most people understand what you mean when you say, I know something. But just take a second and actually try and explain what it is to know something. Like, seriously, find a spouse, significant other, your dog, a stuffed animal, find something nearby or someone nearby, and trying to explain what knowledge is. Take a second. Now, try and explain what makes knowledge different from, say, belief, a lucky guess, or a hunch. What makes knowledge different from a really confident guess? It's rather difficult, isn't it? You see, knowledge, like a lot of other things, is something that we use in almost every aspect of our life, but we generally don't have very clear or well-defined answers to these kinds of questions. And common sense usually doesn't cut it. Chances are you were able to formulate some rough version of an answer to that question. You started stammering out something about, maybe belief, or you got it from a reliable source, or something like that, which is good. You're starting to try and answer the question. But the point here is to illustrate how difficult it is. And common sense, unfortunately, doesn't solve that difficulty. Common sense is often inconsistent. It often leads us astray when we try and talk about these things. And, we want consistent and real answers to all this. Because what knowledge is, or what the point of my life is, or how I'm supposed to be acting, these are answers that ripple out through various aspects of our lives. If I don't know really what knowledge is, I'm going to have a hard time determining what evidence I should be listening to if I'm trying to determine, say, the result in the court case, or which experiments should I be trusting, or what kind of data should I be going after in one of the physical sciences. That can lead to things like affecting which studies on cancer research we end up trusting. These foundational ideas, these supposedly dumb or naive questions, are actually very much worth a real investigation and effort. We need clear and distinct and rigorous understandings of a lot of these foundational concepts. And philosophy is the area of the university, the aspect of the pursuit of human knowledge that actually tries and answers these things. Now, that's all well and good, but chances are a lot of you are really just interested in the practical aspects of this sort of thing. There's probably a lot of you who are legitimately interested in this class, but chances are there's also a lot of you who are taking it online simply because you thought it was the most efficient way to get through, a class that didn't mean a whole lot to your major. It's okay if you don't understand a ton of philosophy, you probably were thinking. And chances are you're right. In the sense of completing your degree, it's not the end of the world if you understand Plato or not. But there's actually a very real, practical benefit to studying philosophy. You see, there's actually a lot of extremely useful and very marketable and profitable skills that you can gain by doing philosophy. On the one hand, probably the single best thing you'll gain is critical thinking, the ability to evaluate and analyze the information that's given to you and not just take it for granted. But in the process of studying, you'll also learn the ability to form and evaluate arguments, the ability to present your own ideas in a clear and precise format, the ability to write clearly and to read difficult text, and hopefully the ability to explain it and not water it down, but distill it down to its fundamental ideas. And all of these are essential to succeeding in whatever career you want to pursue, as well as just human life in general. I probably don't have to tell you how useful having a built-in bullshit detector would be in your head. But if you get good enough critical thinking skills, that's precisely what you'll have. And regardless of whether you're going into the hard sciences, into the business world, into academia, no matter what career you want to pursue, the skills that you gain from philosophy are going to be useful for it. Additionally, philosophy is actually proven to be very profitable just on its own. Students who study philosophy actually tend to do better on virtually every graduate school entrance exam. My personal favorite one of these stats, and there'll be links to these kinds of studies in a couple of the readings for this unit. My personal favorite is that philosophy students who take the GMAT, the graduate school business entrance exam, the thing that you have to take in order to get into like MBA programs and the like. A philosophy student who takes that and who has never taken a single business course in their life will actually outscore dedicated business majors on average on that exam. So you're better off studying philosophy than business if you want to go into business school, at the graduate level. And philosophy majors, people who study philosophy, quite consistently, regularly outscore almost every other major on every graduate school entrance exam. They're one of the top scoring majors on the GRE, the just general grad school exam. They are second only to the combo of physics and mathematics on the LSAT, the law school entrance exam. And so long as you couple philosophy with the prerequisites for medical school, they do wonderful on the MCAT as well. And philosophy majors, students who study philosophy, have been shown to actually have higher earnings than most majors after 10 years. That is, after 10 years after graduation, they went back and surveyed different majors and saw how much they were earning, and philosophy was actually on the higher end. So no matter how you define success, even if you define it purely in monetary or financial terms, philosophy is actually rather useful. You can succeed in life by studying philosophy. I'm not trying to sell you on being majors, but I am trying to point out that a class that you might have previously thought was kind of fluffy and useless actually has some very practical benefits here. So, food for thought. Now, in terms of actually studying philosophy, we're going to be going through a few different branches, a few of the different major areas and subjects that philosophy goes over. And each of these goes by these four labels: ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, and a few other fields. We'll be spending a unit each on the first three of those and dabbling a little bit in the other. Now, each of these branches studies something different. Ethics is all about questions regarding morality and the good life. These are the big, deep questions like, what kinds of actions are morally right? How should I be living my life? What's the best life for a human being? And as well as the question we'll be focusing on quite a bit, is there such a thing as objective morality? Or is it all just relative to cultures or what individuals think? Is there a reason to care about what morality asks of me? These are all questions that philosophy asks. Now, metaphysics, despite the name having a bit of a bad reputation, is about the study of the nature of reality. These are investigations into the fundamental principles that govern what reality is like. The name literally means beyond physics. These are the questions that go beyond what a physicist can study about reality. Things like, what is existence? What is space? What is time? There's actually a fair bit of overlap between theoretical physics and metaphysics. But in general, philosophers go to those types of questions that can't ever be evaluated by experimentation, and instead have to be understood only in theory. The question of free will, of whether you're just a physical thing or a thing that has a non-physical part like a mind or a soul, is part of metaphysics. Now the third branch, epistemology, is all about knowledge and justification and belief. This is where you get like our example question about knowledge. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that studies things like, what is knowledge? What kinds of things can justify my beliefs? What kind of evidence should I be trusting? Is intuition something worth listening to, or is it even real at all? What does it mean to understand something? What's going on when I'm thinking? These are all the questions that happen in epistemology. Now the other field, literally the other field, is the area that I've just used to sort of encapsulate all the other major areas of philosophy that don't really fit into one of the other three categories because they combine aspects of them. This is a lot of where you get your philosophy of such and such, like the philosophy of mind or the philosophy of religion. These are the areas of philosophy that investigate the foundational principles of some other subject, like math, religion, physics, science, the mind, all these types of things. For the most part, our units are going to focus on the first three, but we're going to dabble a little bit in the other fields as they become relevant to the things we ask about. So, that's the sort of material that we're going to be covering in this class. If you have any questions about what the class is going to cover, or about any of the course policies, now's a good time to go ahead and stop, write those questions down, and either go ahead and contact me, or wait until after the next part of the lecture to clear them up. So that wraps up part 1. Go ahead and move over to part 2 of the first lecture, and I'll see you over there.